We just finished a conversation, or we'll continue our conversation, frankly, about the state of affairs with regard to law enforcement and unrest and chaos in Los Angeles. But we could be having this conversation, sadly, in many of America's larger cities right now. But we're having it about L.A. because last night we even saw this lawlessness spill over literally into the streets of Hollywood. What are we supposed to do? What are cops supposed to do in the face of this? Joining us right now, Craig Lally, our friend and president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Craig, thanks for joining us today on KBC.
Pleasure being on your show, Larry.
This latest surge in unrest and protests, of course, coming after the announcement out of Louisville, Kentucky, with regard to the charges that were delivered in the Breonna Taylor case, and frankly, most importantly, obviously, the charges that were not delivered. Craig, as usual, I got to ask, as you see what happens in Louisville, and now it's spilled into protests and unrest in major cities, are your brothers and sisters in the LAPD looking at each other saying, what has this got to do with us? Why are we being punished and accused and defunded and demonized because of what happened in Louisville?
Well, it's not only what happened in Louisville. How about Minnesota or Ferguson, Missouri? It's just insane what's going on out there. And, the thing is that this violence is going on across the countries, and this is not peaceful protest by any stretch. And it's not about justice, Larry. It's about destroying our cities and about targeting and trying to hurt cops. That's what the focus is on this. We have to be on the front lines. We're protecting the people to do a protest, a peaceful protest, and then we become the targets, and that's been going on for years now, and that's the problem. That's the huge problem right now. Our cops are getting hurt. You know about the two deputies that got shot in the head,
Yes.
just sitting in their patrol car. You had two Louisville officers that were shot on Wednesday, and all they were doing is responding to a quote peaceful protest. And then in Seattle, I saw where an officer was hit from behind with a baseball bat in the head. I mean, we are the targets. We are the targets. We represent good over evil, and that's the problem right now. We are the targets.
Yeah, the insidious language of a mostly peaceful protest, except for the two police officers who were shot and had to go to the hospital for their gun wounds. I mean, what does that even mean? Mostly, yeah, that's like saying a battle and a war is mostly peaceful, until everyone starts shooting their guns. It's just insidious, but it tells you that there's a political agenda, even, about behind reporting of a basic, fact-based story. There was a protest, a riot, and a cop got shot, period. That's the story, and that's a violent situation, Craig.
Well, just take the Breonna Taylor incident in itself. The officers got a warrant signed by a judge to go into that apartment legally. There was a no knock, but they actually did knock. They go inside, and the boyfriend shoots at the officers and hits one in the leg. And then, unfortunately, Breonna Taylor was in the room, and she got shot. I don't know if she got caught in the crossfire or whatever, but the incident itself, most rational people would know that the officers did everything right legally to get into that apartment. Yeah. They got a warrant signed by a judge, actually knocked when they didn't have to knock, but that's not the narrative out there. It's
right.
That the cops in Louisville murdered her, and it seems to be a little of a twist here. They murdered her, but they let the boyfriend live, who didn't get shot in the apartment, and none of this makes any sense.
Right. Right, yeah. If there was true racial animus here, then the boyfriend also would have suffered at the hands of these racist cops. But it doesn't make any sense. And again, you want to change policies. But the police officer and by the way, Craig, if I can just pause my own thought process for a moment there, how frustrating is it for you and for other cops that there were critical, fundamental facts in this case that didn't come out until the actual day that the grand jury announcement was made? I mean, it would have been nice for the last several months to know that the cops identified themselves, that they didn't execute this warrant as a no-knock warrant, that there were eyewitnesses in the building that heard them say, "Open up, it's the police." I mean, that's pretty critical here, Craig.
Well, I think it was out there. I knew about that a while ago. But it's the media doesn't, depending on what side of the media wants to take, if if they're a supporter of Black Lives Matter, defund the police, they're never going to give you the full facts. A lot of those media outlets are still sticking with the narrative, even though an officer got shot in this from inside the apartment from the boyfriend. How is that not important? Right. I mean, so I've known
not
about
only the officer got shot, but the officer got shot first. That was the first action of violence, was shooting a police officer.
Correct. And so I just think, unfortunately, the media is going to twist this the way they want it to for their narrative, and that's what we're stuck with in law enforcement. And usually we're on the bad side of that narrative. It's just the way it is.
Speaking with Craig Lally, he's the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. Let's bring it to what we're seeing in the streets of Los Angeles right now in reaction. We're told it's in reaction to the Breonna Taylor verdict or charges that came down this week. First of all, I do want to, I'm sure you saw this video of an African-American LAPD officer standing there calm, dignified, disciplined, composed with these protesters who don't deserve to even be in this incredible young man's presence, taunting him, throwing racial slurs at him, inches of his face. You saw this video, Craig. What can you tell me about what it takes for a cop to be able to have to withstand that and still stay disciplined? And I couldn't do it. Well,
Larry, I've been a cop for 40 years, and I don't know if I could do it. So I saw that tape, and I saw that officer taking that crap from looked like a couple of punks. Gutless punks who wear masks, that don't want to be identified. But my hat's off to them. Like I said, I don't think I could have withstand that. But that's the state we're in right now. And obviously they're there to taunt the officer, to get a reaction, to maybe use force, maybe go cross that line. And that's what they're trying to do.
Right.
But it's sad. We're the targets now. It's got nothing to do with the cause anymore. It's let's just have a riot. Well, it starts out with a protest and it goes to a riot, and the cause doesn't matter. It's just let's cause anarchy. Let's get Antifa involved.
Do you think they're trying to create a viral moment? Do you think that they are trying to get police officers to react so then suddenly they look like victims of more police brutality?
Oh, absolutely. You take that. Remember that the chippy that the guy jumped on the hood of a chippy car on the freeway during the riots?
Oh, very so.
And the chippy drove off. And the narrative out there by some of the media was that the chippy just ran the guy over for no reason. Well, he was jumping out of the hood of the car, probably trying to bash in the window. Who knows? Maybe even to try to throw a Molotov cocktail inside the car, because that was done in New York with officers in it. So the guy takes off with the guy in the hood, and the narrative is that the CHP ran over this protester, which was not even close to the truth. Yeah. We see it time and time again. It's all about trying to push that envelope, try to get the narrative where the officer might overreact. God bless these guys for putting up with that. Like I said, I don't know if I could do that. They probably would not want to put me on the skirmish line.
Yeah. This is why I wouldn't make it as a cop either. We're speaking with Craig Lally. He's the president of the Los Angeles Police Protective League. You mentioned that I remember that vividly when the protesters swarmed onto the 101 and surrounded the highway patrol car. That was back, I believe, the first day of the George Floyd protest. We're talking, last week of May, first week of June. Last night, we saw in Hollywood a similar situation, but it wasn't a police officer. It was just a civilian. You've got civilians driving down Hollywood Boulevard. They have every right to do. What else are they supposed to do? They're trying to get from point A to point B in L.A., and you've got hundreds of protesters swarming their cars. First question, honestly, from a law enforcement perspective, what is a citizen supposed to do in that situation when we've seen the kind of violence that can erupt when a car gets surrounded?
Well, you know what? Obviously, the person that does that gets caught in that situation. They're very, very scared. They're very scared. So you got to do what you got to do to protect yourself. And I've seen it before like that. And the problem is you got these innocent bystanders caught in the middle. They're not on anybody's side. They just want to go home safely, or they might be coming from work and just trying to get home.
Right. We don't know. They could be going to the hospital for all we know.
True. So it's just crazy what's going on out there right now. We had an officer about an injury to an officer. We had an officer lasered in the eye, unrelated to a protest by one of the lasers that are out there at the Portland protests, and many of them in L.A., where he got hit in the eye with a laser and he's blinded in one eye. And now he's been in this incident happened on July 17th. He's in his house. He hasn't been out in sunlight. He can't be out in direct sunlight. And he's going through some really a lot of pain. He's got migraine headaches. He's throwing up constantly, and this is because of these people that and this person that was arrested was a Black Lives Matter supporter and defund the police supporter. So it's not only at these protests, Larry. This is happening every day in the city of Los Angeles, unrelated to the protests.
So, Craig, so I'm watching this, and I'm seeing this is not a permitted protest. This is not something that was planned. It's 7 o'clock at night. It's Hollywood Boulevard, and you've got hundreds of people that flood into the streets, off the sidewalks, and impede citizens from their right to drive down the street. I look at that as a civilian, Craig, and I think, where are the police? Why can't the police get down there and clear the streets so that people can drive? Because these people are breaking the law. You're not allowed to do that. So where are the police? Are they being impeded from doing their job and protecting and serving the innocent citizens of this city right now?
Well, a lot of it, Larry, is there's a lot of different locations. Sometimes they, by tactics wise, they split up and go in different areas. And we're overwhelmed right now. We don't have enough police officers to begin with. And I will grant it, their tactics are a lot different. Black Lives Matter, defund the police, than they were, say, 40 years ago when I was on the job. They basically had no tactics. So a lot of it's on the protesters, the way they're dividing up. It's like a divide and conquer. And so they stretch us out. And so once they stretch us out, we don't have the resources.
Okay.
This is on top of.
I get it, but let me ask the question in a different way, though. Had the police been there in this location, what is the current protocol at LAPD to blare the sirens, get on the loudspeaker, and clear these people off the streets, or start arresting people if they don't get out of the street?
Well, yeah, it's got to be declared an unlawful assembly, and you have to have acts of violence. There's not a number on that. It depends on the incident commander at the time, who's ever there. But you have to have several acts of violence before you can declare an unlawful assembly, and then you could close down and circle the crowd and then start taking them to jail.
So as long as they're not being violent, there is right now there is nothing stopping hundreds of people from just deciding at a whim that they're going to impede people's progress in their vehicles and stop traffic in Los Angeles.
That's pretty much it. And it's really ironic, these peaceful protests that are going on, but none of the politicians are calling them out during this COVID stuff. Where they're worried about people going to church and being in a church together. Yet they have these massive mobs out there, and a lot of them do a lot of destruction.
Yeah.
Yet none of the politicians are out there condemning it, or
right. Their water's not getting turned off. Their power's not getting turned off.
No social distancing. Nobody caring about that stuff, and that's another whole nother angle that really frustrates me.
All right, so just so I'm clear here, hundreds of people stopping traffic. Police right now, the protocol is they don't do anything.
It depends on if they're blocking streets. It takes the time for the officers to get there and actually develop a plan. They eventually will do something, but you got to it depends on the size of the crowd. You got to get enough officers there that can contain it, and then you take action. And
right.
By merely blocking the street, they can't take action.
Follow-up question. I'm standing on a sidewalk in Los Angeles, and I light up a cigarette, and I'm smoking in public. What happens to me?
Nothing.
I thought that was against the law.
No, that's not against the law.
Oh, all right. What about at a restaurant? How about if I'm at a bar? If I'm at a bar and I light up a cigarette?
We don't enforce that. We would never enforce it.
Hey, listen, that's good to hear. And again, I'm not encouraging people to break the smoking laws, but it seems like sometimes our politicians take those laws a little more seriously than they do these basic fundamental laws of our civilization.
Probably, you're right on that. You're right on that.
Craig, we'll leave it there. Actually, you know what? I remember. I was like, I'm sure I had a conversation with a elected official about the public. It was Beverly Hills. I'm sorry. In Beverly Hills, don't do that. Boy, you'll see. You know.
Well, Beverly Hills is a totally different story.
Yes,
Totally
yes.
different.
I forgot. It was the mayor of Beverly Hills who has a jihad
There you
against
go.
anyone smoking a cigarette on the sidewalk. All right, Craig, we'll keep it there. Please give our best to the men and women in LAPD, and they're in our prayers.
Well, thank you for everything you do, Larry, and thank you for the opportunity to talk on your show today. Have a good weekend.
As